What in the world am I doing? Hey, this is Dr. Tom Curran, and I am in southern France, exactly in Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port. It is the launching point of the Camino Frances, the traditional Camino of Santiago de Compostela. It's about a 500-mile walk across northern Spain. And I am going to be on this journey of the Camino for 34 days. That's the plan. We'll see. It's a 34-stage journey. And the total time I'm going to be away from home is 40 days. And it has dawned on me, what in the world am I doing? It's a kind of an interesting question that friends of mine and family members, including my own family, like, what, Dad, honey, Tom, depending on, you can figure out who they are in relationships. What are you doing? Why would you do this? Is a big question. I just arrived here earlier today, and I've had a chance to talk to a couple of people who are also starting the Camino tomorrow. They're coming in on the train with me, or happen to sit at the next table in the restaurant, and that tends to be the default question. Like, why are you doing this? So I'm going to answer that question because it's not an easy question for me to answer on first blush, and I've got a bunch of notes I'm going to be reading from. So if you see me looking down, I journaled today the answer to that question, and I'm going to be walking you through that in this sharing that I do. And I'll eventually give you 4 reasons why I'm walking the Camino. But before I do that, I want to tell you why I'm not walking the Camino, or not the reason why I'm walking the Camino. And these are reasons that are often encountered and heard from folks who do it. So first of all, it's not on my bucket list. In fact, I don't even have a bucket list. And if I did, I don't think it would be on it. Or if it was on it, it would be really low, and it would just be because, I don't know, it's kind of a cool thing maybe. I've never brought it up in the past, like, oh, I really want to do that. When I hear other people talking about, like, oh, I'd really like to do that, then I'm like, yeah, that sounds, I can see that. But it wasn't a big deal for me. So, and by the way, I'm going to give you 7 reasons why I'm not walking the Camino, and then 4 obstacles that I would face even if I ever did want to walk the Camino. So let's start with the 7 reasons. So that's the first one. It's not on my bucket list, so that's not why I'm walking. The second is, it's not that I want to experience this aspect of Catholic Church history in life, right? Like, a lot of people want to go to the Holy Land, or go to Rome, or go to pilgrimage sites, right? Like Fatima or Lourdes, or Assisi for St. Francis, things like that. I'm not doing this because I'm a student of Catholic history and I want to enter into a journey that millions of pilgrims have made over the centuries. So that's not why I'm doing it. The third is, it's not that I would like to, but I'm held back from doing it because it's not practical and I'm too busy. So that's not why I'm doing it as well. I'm not retired. I am not an empty nester. I still have 3 kids at home, and my other 6 kids, I had 9 kids between 12 and 24. They were all home up until a week ago, and that's one of the reasons I'm actually here right now. But we'll get to that. So I'm not an empty nester. I don't have wanderlust. It's not that I've been to so many other places and have climbed Mount Everest and done sort of wild, adventurous travels. And so this is like the next one that I need to add to that list. That's not me either. I'm not in search of an experience. People today are like, buying experiences, right? Even more than they're buying things, they're buying experiences. That's not what I'm doing here either. Sixth, I am not on a quest for meaning or purpose or spiritual enlightenment. That's not why I'm here either. Though I appreciate those things, and I want to say I want to go deeper into those things, and that'll actually show up in as one of my four reasons. But I'm not searching for meaning, purpose, or enlightenment. And lastly, I'm not at an inflection point in my life, meaning that there's some kind of radical change that's happened, and like retirement. Like two people I've talked to today. One was, I just retired. I was a teacher, school teacher for 20 years, finished my second career, and now I have this gap and I want to sort of figure out what's the next stage. And so I'm doing the Camino. And another person was, my youngest child just went off to college. I'm now an empty nester, and I'm here to clear my head and focus more on my own self and my own personal journey. And I want to figure out what's next. That's not me. But there is, so I'm not just trying to clear my head. However, with all of that said, those 7 reasons, those are things that would be, I think, acceptable. And obviously a lot of people choose to do a Camino because of that. Not my reasons. Okay. There are also obstacles that would get in the way, even if I did want to do the Camino, and like if it was on the bucket list and I was at an inflection point and I did want to be able to do it. Well, the first is I've got a big family, and I still have 3 kids at home that are in school. And being away for 40 days, that's really kind of beginning to end. When you put arrival, get established, do it, finish off, get back. It's about a 40-day journey. By the way, that's a kind of a cool number, right? If you're a person of faith, there's something about an Exodus that is 40 days long, right? That 40, a long time in the scriptures, is a very meaningful time of transformation, going from slavery to the promised land, being called, being on mission, right? So those would be all examples of 40 days. But for me to be away from Carrie and my kids for 40 days and my family, that's not me. It's not built into me. I don't do that. And it's also just not realistic with the amount of just operational stuff that we have around the house that's going on in our day-to-day lives. Back in the early 2000s, when Carrie and I first got married in 94, then we were blessed with children in 99, and then our family started growing 2001, 2003. In the early years of our marriage, I would speak at conferences around the country a couple times a month, and locally quite a bit in the evenings. And that was just a part of our life with me doing church work. And when our third child came, my third child had some health challenges. I made a decision to stop traveling nationally. I did not want to build a church ministry, an apostolate on the back of my family by like going and being away for a whole weekend at a conference. And I think I was pretty extreme too in how I would limit my time away. The funniest example is I was asked to speak at a conference in central Ohio on a Saturday morning. So the conference was Friday night through like the end of Saturday. And they had me on the schedule. I said, can you put me on the schedule Saturday morning? I'll give 2 talks on Saturday morning. And what I ended up doing was I booked a ticket to take a red eye from the West Coast from Seattle. I flew into the nearest big city, rented a car, drove a couple of hours, got out of the car, walked into the event. Within 5 or 10 minutes, I was up on the stage. I gave 2 talks. When my second talk was done, I came off of the stage, went out the door, got back in my car, drove back to the airport. I was on a plane, and I was back home within 24 hours. And that was from Seattle to Central Ohio. And I served that conference by giving the 2 talks. That's kind of extreme. My typical experience when I would go to these like weekend events is that the speaker would arrive maybe even a day before to kind of get themselves adjusted to the environment and time change, and they'd be around or even the whole day of the conference and on Friday, and they'd speak, and then they'd be around all day Saturday, and maybe they'd speak in the afternoon, and then they'd be around Sunday morning for the final event, and then they'd fly back Sunday afternoon. I just could not do that. I internally would not do that, where I just felt like it was more about me than it was about my family. And I think to be fair, these speakers would have said, hey, this is really about me being present to the conference and really wanting to respect them and the fact that they were bringing me out and paying for me to be there and paying to give these talks, that I really wanted to be fully present. I respect that, but that was not me. So with that as my approach to my family and my life, I could never imagine being away for 40 days. And I think I looked and I'm like, I don't think I've been away since we've had kids, for 4 days, not to mention 40. So the second is, and even when I'd be away, like I had a contract doing consulting work, and I was away for a day, like once or twice a week during the day. And I would be calling home a couple of times during the day. Hey, how's everything going? And checking in. Like, that's my sensitivity to being present to my family and to Carrie. Okay, the second reason is work. So not just the idea of being away that long from my family, it would be just a big obstacle to doing the Camino. The second is work. So I do 2 kinds of work, neither of which offer 9 to 5 typical opportunities. Not that it's impossible, it's just that it's, again, not how I'm built, and that's ministry work and real estate work. And so in my ministry work, I do this radio program. It's Monday to Friday, and oftentimes I'm also fitting in interviews and I'm giving talks, things like that. Not as much of that. So that ministry work and then real estate work. And real estate work, a lot of it has a mission component, because I'm helping a lot of people move who are moving for reasons of faith. And so that's a pretty intensive work. And what it is not 9 to 5. So mornings, evenings, weekends. That has been how I've lived my life. On the ministry side, in earlier parts of my life, when our kids were younger, I would be out regularly, a couple times a week, giving talks, and again, weekends doing events. And then with the radio program, when I would be recording programs, that would even customarily happen in the evenings. So that's been my sort of work life, not balance, work life out of balance. I'm not justifying it. I'm just saying that or even saying that it's healthy. It's just how I've actually lived. So that would be a second reason why the idea of going on the Camino just would not fit. The third is finances. So I am not wealthy enough to retire. I need to work in order to make money this month to pay the bills this month. And if you follow, like, most of my income comes not from ministry, but from real estate. Well, if you're not present and you're not actively serving clients, then guess what happens? These clients are not buying or selling a house, and you're not helping with the buying or selling a house in the transaction. You get paid when the transaction closes, and that's when the check comes in. And so the idea of me being away for 40 days, Carrie's like, how are we going to pay the bills? And not just that, but what about momentum? Wouldn't that be kind of catastrophic for momentum if you're not just going to be away those 40 days, but then the time before that in preparing for this is also going to diminish your availability to serve people? How's that even going to be possible? So, and then just there's a lot of moving parts in our lives. Carrie and I do a lot of dividing and conquering. And And so there are like rental properties that we have to take care of, and that's a lot of additional work as well. So that'd be a third obstacle to me being where I am today, doing the Camino. The fourth is I'm not in the physical condition to walk 500 miles in 34 days across not the easiest environment. So it's a 15 miles a day average, and doing it in 34 stages. I'm 59 years old, and I am not in shape. I'm going to give good reasons why I'm not in shape, right? That I think the principal one was a couple of years ago. I had a pretty significant concussion, and my attempts to work out would resurface the impacts, and so it would be difficult for me to be able to find a way to exercise. Do you see how I just gave myself a nice little rationalization there? But it's also a fundamental limitation where I could do certain kinds of exercise, but not in a way that would cause my head to move around quickly. Otherwise, the concussion impacts would increase, and that would just really slow me down and knock me back. And that's my nice little rationalization to say that I wasn't eating healthy. And if my lifestyle is so busy that I'm not going to be able to focus on eating healthy and well, then I'm going to be physically out of shape. All right, so concussion impacted, overweight, not working out, not eating healthy. Let's just say that my kids were doubting, Dad, can you really do this? I mean, I was a little taken aback that they thought that I was that, let's call it unhealthy or not physically fit enough to be able to do it. And so those are my 4 obstacles. Okay, so there you go. I've got 7 non-motivations for being here, and I've got 4 obstacles that would stop me from being here. So the conclusion is what? Tom will not be walking the Camino, or will never be walking the Camino, at least in the foreseeable future. And yet, here I am. Tomorrow, on August the 28th, I start stage 1 of my Camino. And it's the most physically challenging of the stages, of the 34 stages. So, all right. Actually, I want to tell you why I'm walking, but I've got one more question that was asked to me just a couple of days ago by my 14-year-old daughter, Luciana. We were driving in the car, and this was like a couple of days before I was getting on the plane. And what she said was, Dad, what are you most looking forward to and most excited about on the Camino? What do you have going on? What are you most looking forward to in walking the Camino? And that's an easy question, right? It's not a complicated question. It's not a trick question. I didn't have an answer. What was I most looking forward to or excited about? I wasn't excited about being away from my family. I was not excited about walking 15 miles a day for 33 days straight. I was not excited, honestly, about meeting people. I come to find out that meeting other pilgrims who walk the Camino is like this essential aspect of things. I hadn't studied the Camino. I didn't realize that. Or seeing sights and the beauties of northern Spain, or eating foods that are sort of local and traditional Camino foods. That was not what was exciting me. I was not excited, like most excited about the idea that this was going to get me in shape, even though I hope it does. That is not, that wasn't in my head as the thing I was most excited about. To be honest, I'm going to give an answer to the question, but I think most of you are going to think it's really strange. And so the answer to the question is that what I was most excited about was that I would have the opportunity to pray extensively and do penance extensively for my family, for my wife and my kids, as part of my call as a husband and father to lead and provide and protect my family. I think that was the biggest thing that I was excited about. And to add into that, I'm going to use another word like pray, do penance. I'm going to say make reparation, to repair the damage that sin has caused in my life, in Carrie, my wife's life, in our marriage, and in my kids' lives, in each of them and in all of them. And so in my family, to repair the damage. That would be a big deal for me. I think that's what I was excited about. So, and I think that if I had to refine that even a little bit more, it would be to have a new way to express my commitment to my kids, to pour myself out, to sacrificially give of my life for their spiritual flourishing and well-being. That excited me. And I didn't realize that was happening until the day before I left for the Camino. My oldest daughter handed me a stack of letters from my kids. My kids had written me letters that I read when I got here. And they all highlighted the fact that they were proud of me and were very appreciative and grateful and loving me for the sacrifices that I was making and coming here, that I was doing for them, that they were appreciating that. And that was very meaningful to me. And in fact, it had kind of a positive impact where all of them were saying, I'm going to do something for you spiritually. I'm going to pray for you. I'm going to fast for you. I'm going to pray a rosary every day for you. Things like that. That my commitment to do this evoked from them a step forward in their own spiritual life. And so that was really beautiful. So I would say that would be the thing that I was most excited about when my daughter asked me that question a couple of days ago. Okay, one more time. What in the world am I doing walking the Camino? I gave you the 7 reasons that are very common that are not the reasons why I'm doing it. I gave you the 4 obstacles that would fundamentally hold me back from being able to do it. Well, why am I doing it? And how did it ever appear in my life that this is what I should be doing? Well, let's answer the question. The 4 reasons are, I'll give them to you in kind of bullet point form, and then I'll unpack them. The first is, I am 10xing my life. Just hold on to that phrase. I'm 10xing my life. The second is the devotion to the Holy Face is why I'm doing this. My devotion to the Holy Face of Jesus, which is behind me right there on the wall. The third is to do what I shared, was the thing I was looking forward to the most, which was to be a pilgrim. This is a pilgrimage for me, and that means I'm walking on a journey, and the means of accomplishing that journey involves acts of prayer, penance, and reparation, acts of self-denial and self-giving that are not comfortable or easy. That is a third reason I'm doing this. And then the last is to go out into the deep. Go out into the deep. And that's a scripture passage from the Gospel of Luke, chapter 5. But it's also an element of mystery. And so I'll talk about these 4 reasons. And the first one is really the entry point that ended up being a means of having the Camino appear on my radar screen as something that I was being invited to do. Did you hear that language? That's an important language. I'm going to come back to that at the very end. I was invited to do. Okay, 10xing my life. What the heck is 10xing my life? Well, there is a book by Dr. Ben Hardy and Dan Sullivan called 10x is easier than 2x. 10x is easier than 2x. Now, let me just say, I'm not recommending the book, but there's a fundamental concept in here and an approach to what is typically called strategic planning that is actually like game changing. And for me, it is the thing that broke open the possibility for this to even emerge as a path forward for me. And so where did this come from and how did it get introduced to me? Well, let's go back to Carrie. So my wife and I, on May the 27th, that was a Memorial Day, we were driving in a car to Boise, Idaho, to be away for 4 days. And the reason we were doing that was because of Carrie. So in a few months from May 27th, actually August the 12th, we would be married, and now we are married 30 years. So we got married 30 years ago. And Carrie pointed out to me that since we had kids, that was in 1999, September, our first child was born. Since then, we hadn't gotten away, just the two of us, for any meaningful length of time. Like to just get away from home, just the two of us for a few days, just to be able to spend time together, to enjoy each other, to enjoy life, to do something fun, or to reflect on important things that were part of our life. And that's a long time, right? That's almost 25 years. And while being blessed with 9 kids in the first 12 of those 9 years, you can see why it would be, I'm coming up with the rationalization again, right? The reason why it would be not easy for us to just get away for 4 days. But Carrie was feeling the pain, I guess that's a good word, of the limitations that were showing up in our married life and in our parenting, so in our family. And she was looking at the idea of getting away for these 4 days as a chance for us to reflect, as a chance for us to do those things that I had just mentioned. And so she's like, you never take me away. Let's make it happen. I said, great, we're going to do it. And so Memorial Day weekend into the week, Monday through Thursday, we're getting away. And so taking that time and space. So my excuses were just rationalizations, even if I consider them explanations. But the reality was, even though we were and are doing so well in so many ways in our married life, that there were aspects of our life where we weren't flourishing. And quick aside, we are on a journey in this life, and there are always going to be elements in your married life where you're not flourishing. They're just limits. And so being open to the fact that, yeah, we have limits, and that's just what it is. Heaven will remove those limits, but when you're on the way, you have limits. Okay. Well, what were the areas in our current reality that needed to be changed? And the efforts that we were doing to change them weren't sufficient. They weren't working. The first was my physical condition. I mentioned the idea that I'm overweight, I'm out of shape, not grossly, but in a way that was off-putting to Carrie. And one of the things that Carrie has a right to or deserves in our married life is that I would respect her and love her enough to want to show up to her in a way that she can esteem and enjoy and celebrate. And that's not easy when I am out of shape. And so that was hurting us. That was hurting our married life and love. And so despite my efforts, when my efforts didn't yield results, then it was easy to just conclude, well, I just have excuses, because if it was that important, then I would be able to improve, I'd do better, and the change would happen. So whatever I could propose as, here's an ideal that I'm going to get at, it wasn't working. And so that was one area. The second was my work-life balance. And so uh, I have a servant's heart. And so I am not quick to set boundaries on other people's requests from me. And as a result of that, there's a downstream impact, and that impact can principally be felt by my wife and kids if I'm busy serving other people and not attending to them as a priority and putting up the boundaries around the people that, again, in my own rationalization, I can explain or excuse why I wasn't present there or I'm not present in that moment. And so that was something that, again, despite anything that I could say out loud, communicate well, hey, this is a change I'm making, it wasn't happening. The third was regarding our parenting, where Carrie and I would be with 9 kids. It's a lot, right? 5 teenagers. We had 6 kids in post high school, 6 in college, no, 5 in college, and 1 in beauty school this past year, and 3 in private school. Yeah. Carrie's like, I need a plan. I need a plan. What are we doing to financially support them, but also help them be accountable to embrace and to recognize the cost that they're taking on, not just us. And then, but the also the spiritual formation and the total human formation of our kids, helping them to grow and flourish when there's so much at stake at these different times of their lives. And each of them are in these critical moments, right? So whether it's the 6th grader, the 8th grader, the 10th grader, or the 3 college sophomores, the college senior, and then the 2 that are out of just finishing school and off into their next stage in life. Any one of those could be a full-time job, just trying to attend to them and help them kind of take the next steps well. So Carrie would say, we need a plan. We just need a plan. And that plan kind of runs upstream to our financial plan for our future. And do I really want to be working this intensively for the next 15 years? Or is there some plan that we have that will allow us to slow down and shift? So that was a big third, I guess it's the third and fourth, the parenting, but then also just the finances, like understanding our current reality better, and then what's our budget, what's our plan, how do we set and achieve goals that will allow us to retire in a reasonable time frame. And then the last was the place of technology in our lives. So Carrie and I, we give talks on the parenting in the digital age, and one of the first things that we begin with is kind of a simple but dramatic statement that you are addicted to your smartphone until you prove to me you're not. You just are. You're addicted to getting on social media or listening to podcasts. So whatever it is, there's that sense of energy and anxiety if we don't have that smartphone around us. And so Carrie and I were seeing, and she's very sensitized to, how much time are we spending on screens and how much time are we allowing our kids to spend on screens? And that's with us who are like alert and aware and taking action and setting some boundaries. But there was still that sense of, there's a lot of opportunity for us to do better. Are we really just settling for this and wasting? That's it. That's really the key word, wasting our life energy and our time on things that are just not worth it. So that would be a fourth area where getting away, it would give us a chance to talk about all of this. So, and I think the last reason to get away, besides those areas of not flourishing, is associated with Carrie's visionary capability. Carrie has this beautiful sense of envisioning the future, right? Like, where are we headed? What do we really want to do with this stage in our life? Like, where do we really want to go and spend our life energy on? And like, for instance, she just successfully oversaw, planned, and facilitated a family reunion for her side. And there were like 45 people there, a whole bunch of kids from her family. She did it for her mom, and she also did it for our kids, so that they could be meaningfully connected to their cousins and aunts and uncles. Carrie's commitment was, I really want my kids to stay connected to their cousins and their rootedness in the family and in family traditions, that this is that important. And so she just commits tremendous energy to achieving a vision that is embodied with an ideal that's important for her. And so the ideal that she wanted us to go away and reflect on was, where are we headed? She and I together as a couple, coming up on 30 years of marriage, what's the future hold? And, there's no guarantee for even today or tomorrow, but if we want to be prudent, we cast out that vision for the future, if God would give it to us, and say, we don't want that to be a waste. We want to use it fruitfully. And so the idea was, let's step away, let's step apart and go away from the typical environment that would kind of weigh us down and have us stay in the same circle of thinking and conversation. And let's see if we can tackle some of these bigger issues. So, and I think Carrie also was feeling very much this idea that, we're on the downward slope of things. I mentioned I'm 59 and she's 54, and she said something. I hadn't heard it before, but it makes so much sense when I heard it. She's like, I have to work out so hard now, not to get stronger and more lean and achieve the next level of fitness. I have to work so hard to slow down the loss of my own physical capabilities. Like, wow, that is a striking statement. I hadn't thought of that at a certain point, you reach an age where it's not about, I'm going to get super fit, despite what you see on social media, and I'm going to be this amazing looking specimen at my age. It's, no, I have to work out a ton and eat super healthy just to slow down the losses of muscle mass and energy and physical capability. And if you're not careful, the very act of working out to try to improve could lead to injuries that just set you back even further. So all that's the background. That's the background for Carrie and my drive to Boise. And as we're driving away from home, she says, hey, I want you to listen. We have like about an 8-hour drive, 6, 7, 8-hour drive. She's like, hey, I want you to listen to this podcast. It was like a life hack podcast. And in this life hack podcast, he was interviewing this Dr. Ben Hardy, the co-author of this book, 10X is Easier Than 2X. She says, I just want you to listen to it. I think this might be like a wonderful, like sort of launching pad for us to have interesting and different conversations and maybe find a different way to address some of these pressing issues that I've just shared with you. And the idea was 10x your life, 10x your life. Well, to be really frank and honest, when I first heard her say that, I got a bit defensive. Maybe the word was condescending. A lot of like popular self-help books, even business help books, are filled with platitudes and sort of rehashed ideas, or kind of muddy terms that are like inconsistent, or a weak presentation, and I slice and dice them, right? So I'm quick to critique and watch what I can do. I can make that better. Basically, I wasn't very teachable. I did not have a very docile spirit when she put it in. And it was a rough start, to be honest, like the first 15 or 20 minutes of the podcast. I would have her stop the podcast and I would like slice and dice something he said, like, that's not clear. Here's how I'd say it. Oh, that's inconsistent with what he just said. And I actually would still stand by a number of those things. I'm not saying that in a way that's condescending or arrogant. It's just there is only a certain level of clarity, only a certain level of consistency, and insight that this fellow has. But with that said, I said, you know what, before I frustrate her, let me just stop. Let me set aside my critical spirit and let me be humble and docile enough to receive from this guy and see if, in fact, this becomes a path to a new level of insight. Okay. And when that happened, I actually was quite surprised and beautifully surprised. In fact, I listened for a while and I said, Carrie, this is amazing. This is incredible. I mean, like, my goodness. And essentially, it's an alternative to, I think I mentioned this before, strategic planning, if you're familiar with that. So so my background, I have a PhD in systematic theology, and a lot of what I do is communication. And I would employ that and deploy those insights in corporate America. And so for the last 25 years, I've been serving CEOs and senior leadership teams in small businesses and then in bigger companies as well. And so I had to perform, I had to be effective, or I was gone. And so this is where I had that honed in idea of being slow to just say, oh, wow, this guy's amazing. But the insight that he had was shifting away from this traditional idea of strategic planning, which says, know your current reality, envision a future that's preferable, that's more ideal, identify goals that are associated with the accomplishment of that vision, identify then, in the light of where you're at and where you're striving to get to, where you're committed to go, what's the path to take to get there? And that path will involve utilizing certain assets and overcoming certain obstacles that you have identified as on that path and going to move you forward on that path. And then as you identify assets and obstacles, you then turn that into a plan, and the plan will have certain people doing certain work over a certain amount of time, costing a certain amount of money. And then you break that up into a succession of activities. This leads to this, et cetera. And then you put it into action, and someone has to drive the execution on that plan. And as you do that, you begin to evaluate and reflect on, is this working? And do we have to make some kind of course correction? And as things that are unexpected show up and other things that we expected to work didn't, et cetera. Okay, so there's strategic planning in a nutshell. Well, his point is that strategic planning is going to fall within a typical framework of a 2X type scenario where, okay, if our current reality is we're doing this much of a good thing, then by the end of this time period, let's say a year, at the end of this next year, we're going to want to be doing as much as twice as well as we're doing right now, twice as many, twice the level of accomplishment. So that would be 2X, 2 times that level of accomplishment. And that's what some people would call a big, hairy, audacious goal, right? And when you're setting out to say, here's where we're at, here's where we're going, right? A vision, strategy, plan, and action, execution, and reflection, right? Evaluation, and then you kind of keep going back, you iterate on that. The typical way of accomplishing that is by working smarter and not harder, right? So being more efficient, being more intentional, do what is important and not just what is urgent, identifying those types of things, and working better as a team. And so delegating and learning how to do teamwork and communication, and then supporting, encouraging, and being accountable, and evaluating and measuring and all right, systems, processes. So all of those things are typical ways of trying to get to that next point, right? And it's by improving, right? You're just going to be improving, and you're going to get to that next level, even if it's twice as good. Okay, so this guy's point is, what if the way to bring about radical change is not by envisioning a future that's even as big and audacious as twice as good as what you're doing right now, but imagine it being 10 times what your current situation is, 10 times the current reality. And the point here is that once you go to a 10x life, a life that is far beyond anything that you can tie back to your current reality, then all of a sudden, all of the typical ways of achieving what it is you want to do no longer are going to work. They're not going to get you there. They're not going to be sufficient to get you from where you're at to 10 times that goal, right? So in a business, you're not going to be 10 times as productive by just working harder, working smarter, working, doing the important instead of the urgent, all those different things. You're never going to get there if you try to envision a 10x goal. And so the natural conclusion is, well, don't do that. There's no reason to do a 10x goal. Well, this is where I part ways with Ben Hardy and his research, which is not only based in like psychological research. I honestly think it's based on a framework for life that is Mormon. That framework of looking at life, which is the best way to envision the future, is to create it. So you have this creative capacity, and so he goes into the psychology that I think is associated with that philosophy of life, which is if you can convince your unconscious, your subconscious, that's real, the 10x life is real, then it will become real. So you have to intentionally place in your mind that the 10x reality is the reality I'm living out of. And if I start living in accord with my 10x life, then my life will start to transform into the 10x life because it's already there in my mind. I've envisioned it, I've created it psychologically, and so it will then be translated into the reality of my present life, and it'll do so in ways that are surprising to me and unexpected, and watch what happens, right? The path will emerge. That's where I part ways, because I got so excited that this actually fits in a Catholic framework, a philosophy of life that says that the reality that is most truly and profoundly yours, your ideal reality, is in one way present, but in a hidden state. And it is your task to remove the things that are hiding that ideal reality from manifesting itself more completely in your life. It's called prolepsis. So a proleptic path of advancing, a proleptic path of growth is not seeking to improve and gain more skills and grow and advance and being able to do things that you couldn't do before. But rather, it's about unveiling the reality that is already present inside of you, but in a hidden state. And so that's what prolepsis is. And it's actually connected to the idea of growing in holiness. Growing in holiness in our tradition is associated with a Latin term called ablatio. And ablatio means the process of removing. So you grow in holiness, not principally by becoming more holy, by doing more holy things, but rather by removing the things in your life that are hiding the holiness that already exists within you, but in a hidden state. This actually is associated at a more human level with a certain way of seeing sculpting. John Donne, the Anglican priest and poet author, had this famous saying that the sculptor does not make the statue, he removes what hid it. The sculptor does not make the statue, he removes what hid it. This is the story of Michelangelo coming into the workshop of Donatello and seeing this very large block of marble that had been there for, I don't know, like 20 years. And this one particular time when he comes in, he sees the block of marble and has this revelation, this vision. And he says, seeing the block of marble, I saw David, and it was my job to set David free from the marble. So the famous statue of David, it was not, here's a block of marble, let me make something from it, of it, but rather, no, I saw David in it, and there are things that are hiding it from showing up. What if we take that concept of prolepsis, that proleptic approach to life, and let's apply it to this 10x idea? That a 10x life would be envisioning a life that you could live that would more profoundly and completely bring out into the world, bring out into your day-to-day life, the life that you were made for. That God, in creating you, created you to become this saint, to become holy, and to fulfill a God-given mission. So think of that, holiness and mission, who I am and what I'm called to be about, being and doing or acting. And when we look at those foundations for living our life, all of a sudden we can stop and say, okay, the life that I'm living right now, how deeply does it correspond to the ideal manifestation of the life that I'm called to live and to do the things that I was made to do? What if we took that risk? What if we were willing to 10x our life? So in 10xing our life, what I took from this podcast and said to Carrie is, Carrie, this is amazing. This is exciting. When we get to Boise, let's take some time. I brought big whiteboards for us to do, like what's our budget, what's our plan, and all the stuff that we had set out to talk about. And what if we were to like pray and reflect and then try to articulate what our 10x life would look like? What would my life look like? What if I was more perfectly and ideally living day to day the life that corresponded to the person that God created me to be, that called to live a holy life, and ultimately to become a saint, right? Not even a big S saint, right? But just to say to live a saintly life and to fulfill a God-given mission. And so to stop and say, if I was searching my heart, looking at my life and saying, what has God planted me here to do? Is that, in fact, what I'm actually doing right now? Well, let me try to envision it. And so I did. And we did. And so Carrie and I took some time and I said, here you go, Carrie, let me put on paper what a 10x life would look like. One other element about this was that this 10x like envisioning process can be put in a time frame of 3 years, 2 years, 1 year. Carrie wanted more immediate results. Let's do 90 days. Let's do 90 days from now. We are living our 10x life. What would living your 10x life look like if you were doing it 90 days from now? And just in passing, I'll come back around to this. We did this process and started this process on May the 27th. 90 days later, August 25th, was the day I flew from home to start the Camino. I didn't plan that like that. That wasn't on, I just literally realized that today when I was journaling. But Carrie's intent, Carrie was like, we need to not focus on a year, 3 years. The things that were important to her in this envisioning of a 10x life was 90 days. Let's live a 10x life in 90 days. So I started to write down, what does my 90 days, what does my 10x life look like? And let me just say that this is not an easy process for people, right? And you can understand why, right? So the first is, if you envision this 10x life that says, here's what I'm going to be doing, here's like going to be what my life looks like when it's in this more ideal state, because it doesn't have the natural connection back to your current reality, like what you're living today, all of a sudden there's this gap, right? Strategic planning says, okay, well, this goal is going to be doing these things better, right? And here's the path and the plan, and then here's how we're going to execute on it. All that gets washed away. And so a natural tendency is that a visionary would say, yeah, I can envision like that all day long, but that's just fantasy. Like if there's no way to connect that back to current reality, then visioning is just dreaming and fantasizing. And so that would be a challenge to doing this 10x process, is somehow not just saying, well, the process is just leading to a fantasy and a dream that doesn't have any connection to the life I'm living. The second is that the person who's saying, well, okay, I can get the vision, but what's the strategy? What's the path to take to get there? Because I can't see how to get from where I'm at to that life in any kind of 90-day reality. It just doesn't make any sense that I could actually get there. And so that's me. It's like, well, what's the path I'm going to take to get from, I can envision the reality and just say, yeah, that's more ideal. I can actually say that I look in my heart, this is what my ideal life looks like. Ideally, if I was fulfilling as completely as I could the life that God has for me right now, using my best gifts, using my energy, doing the things that I'm most passionate about and feel the deepest that I'm called to do. I can envision that. What I can't figure out is how to get there, the path. And I'm really good at strategizing, but I could not figure out how to get there. Okay, so the third is what Carrie is. Carrie's a planner. She's like, what's the plan? Like, that's all well and good, Tom, but what's the plan? What do you concretely do today, tomorrow, and the next day to get there? That's really, it's not very practical. It's certainly not going to be like, if you're going to be doing this stuff that you know takes this amount of time and brings this kind of result and financial stability, well, how are you going to get up to here and do all of this? Aren't you going to put at risk all of this other stuff? That doesn't make any sense to me. And so you can see how this idea of pursuing this 10x approach to discernment and living, it is not an easy thing. It's not a natural thing to just say, oh yeah, I get this. And so one of the keys to doing this well is the acknowledgement of all of that, that when I envision this more ideal life, I don't know the path to take to get there. And that's okay. I can acknowledge that. I don't know the plan to put in place because I don't know the path to take. And you know what? That's okay. I'm going to give myself permission not to have to know the path and the plan to take action today and tomorrow. I'm going to just focus on envisioning that future ideal reality. And I'm going to, and here's the word, trust. I'm going to trust that, this is where I differ from that Ben Hardy, is that if I'm envisioning this proleptic reality that is more completely, profoundly who I am and what I was created to do, then God is at work, because there's something authentic about this, something very powerful about this, that will, if you will, trust that God will reveal the way. God will make the path. God will reveal the plan to put in place to be able to help me get from and take me from where I'm at to this 10x life. God will do it. And I'm just going to have to trust. And so Okay, so there we go. So without worrying about or focusing on how am I going to connect or practically live and financially afford this 10x life, I'm just going to take the risk. I'm going to go within myself, and I'm going to undergo this discernment process. And I did it. And I brought the whiteboards and the markers out, and I'm going to share with you what I envisioned as my 10x life. My 10x life. Okay, Carrie, 90 days, 10x life. What am I doing? Well, I don't want to live my life in half measures. So that idea that doing what is going to bring me to that 10x life is not a half measured life. It's not business as usual. There's an all-in quality to it. The second is that I feel this passion to spend the life that remains to me on doing the things that I'm most passionate about. And those things are praying with people online, praying online with others. And those of you that have followed me through the years, it's something that I've had a passion for and was able to implement all the way back in October the 1st, 2009. Started Rosary Live and started praying the Rosary Live with others and for others. And so the idea of using the internet as a vehicle for praying, ministering, expecting signs and wonders and God moving in great power to bring healing and freedom and transformation and helping people to grow in faith, that for me is what I would love to spend my best energy doing. The time that I have pouring myself out doing that. In addition, I feel a call to write books, to write on topics that I have journaled about, I've given talks about, but these are things that I have a sense are important for this moment in history in the life of the church. And I don't see other people talking about these things or bringing the kind of insight that I've had sort of tried by fire and have shared and found that people have received well. And this would be even things on like fasting and penance and reparation, things like praying for people that are near to death but far from God, things like that, certain themes that have been really prominent in my life that I would love to put into a book form. So to actually do writing. And then in terms of real estate, I want to use my best gifts to the greatest extent possible. And I've done real estate now for about 3 years. And again, almost the great majority of the time I spend in real estate, I spend helping buyers and sellers to buy and sell homes. But along the way, I've had a chance to utilize my background as a strategy consultant and executive coach to speak into the lives of agents and brokerages. And in doing that, have received a lot of affirmation, like, hey, the things that you successfully employed and deployed in corporate America have significant correspondence and resonance to the world of real estate, and so real estate agents and brokers. And so what I would love to do is to take the time that I spend in real estate, and instead of principally helping buyers and sellers buy and sell homes, to instead give talks, which I love giving presentations, and helping a brokerage or maybe 2 brokerages and a handful of agents as a consultant and coach. And by doing that, I would be able to minimize very significantly the amount of time, and I could containerize. I could be much more intentional about working within hours that were more standard hours and be able to provide for my family, while also being able to increase the number of hours that I would spend doing ministry work. And so that was my ideal life. Honey, I'm going to stop focusing on buying and selling homes. I'm going to raise up and coach and equip other agents. I'm going to give talks at conferences and do a great job and be paid well. And I'm going to consult like I have, but now I'm going to consult with the brokerage and with coach some agents. Ta-da. And I'm going to spend my time doing ministry work, writing books, praying with people online. And so going from the life that I was living on May the 27th to that kind of life in 90 days, Tom, I don't know how that's going to be possible. I can't see how that would be a possible way of living your life. Well, I didn't know how. I just felt a conviction that pursuing that vision was proleptic. It was going to unveil in a more profound way, in a more complete way, the life I was made to live, and it would allow me to more completely be authentic and spend my life energy on the things that I was most passionate about. Okay, well, there we go. That's it. Well, now the question is, how do we get there? Well, that's all really well and good. By the way, in my personal life, in personal life and financial life, I wanted to be able to detox off technology, significantly increase my prayer life. I wanted to lose weight and be in shape. And I wanted to incorporate more fasting and penance and reparation into my lifestyle, in my spiritual life, and then financially be able to simplify our financial way of living as a family. And so simplification was a really big deal, and also be able to provide even better than I was providing through doing all of the work I was doing as an agent. Okay, so if that's my ideal life, Carrie's question was, well, that's all good, but what's the plan? And I'm like, well, what's the strategy? And again, I had to constrain us both and say, it's okay, we don't know. We don't know how we're going to get there. But I'm going to trust that that vision that I had surfaced and shared was in fact a vision that would be, it would come out. It would come to light. That the path would reveal itself. God would make clear to me the path to take to get to there in the 90 days. Well, what ends up happening? So I didn't immediately say on day 2 or day 3, Camino. Didn't happen. To be honest with you, I don't even remember how long into those 90 days that I started to say to Carrie, hey, I think that what we're talking about having me do is so, what I've envisioned for myself is so disruptive, hold on to that word, this disruptive of and dislodging of the life that I'm currently living. I have to go big. I can't just do small steps to get to that 10x outcome. And that was one of Ben Hardy's points, is that going to have to do something much more. I think he uses the word risky, but I want to say that there would be something that would be much bigger. And so I, at one point, said, okay, so I've got to do this step function improvement, right? This radical shift to be able to get there. And it would take an extraordinary step to do it. So at one point, I just said to Carrie, there are 2 things that are coming to my mind as possible paths forward. One of them is the Camino, and the other one is the 30-day spiritual exercises of St. Ignatius Loyola. And so I didn't know how long the Camino was. I guessed it was probably in the neighborhood of a month, but I wasn't sure. And Carrie's initial response was, 30 days? Can you do like 30 hours? Can you do 3 days? 9 days? 13 days? Are you really like serious about like doing a 30-day thing and somehow going away for 30 days. And again, at this point, we still didn't actually know how long a Camino was. And I'm like, if you want me to be that person, that 10x life that we started out on, that this is the path that I'm convicted that I have to take to get there. And of the two, the Camino struck me as a better fit. I saw the idea of doing the 30-day spiritual exercises obviously as going to be an environment that would allow me to fast and pray and slow down and detox from technology. And so there would be a lot of goods and goals there. But there was something that was more like resonant. It resonated with me deeper, that the Camino would have those benefits, but it would have, I don't know if it was the physicality of it or the penance and pilgrimage aspect of things. There was just something that said, I think the Camino is the better option. So I started to look at videos, and when my kids heard that I was like looking at this, and my kids now are again between 12 and 24, they're like, Dad, you kidding, right? you're not serious. And I'm like, no, I am. And so they just kind of kept moving forward, and they're all at home right now because they're home from college. And so we actually had all 9 kids at home, and like, you're not serious. Well, as I continued to watch videos, and then I started to say, okay, practically speaking, if I'm going to do this, when would I do it? And I was like, okay, I can't leave all the kids at home. Let me get the kids back to college, back out of the house, and we'll be down to a manageable moment of the kids are gone, school hasn't yet started and it's not fully engaged. So towards the end of August, and that would, and looking it all up, it was like, okay, it's about 34 days, and then days front and back, total of about 40 days. And that also fit with my speaking. I have a few speaking engagements that were in October. And I'm like, okay, wait a minute, I can just squeeze it in. Like, okay, my kids are intending to drive back to school on the 24th of August. All right, what if I left on the 25th of August? Okay, if I did that, and then it would take me like, okay, a day to get here, a day to get here. Okay, I can do the Camino beginning on the 28th. And then, okay, if it's 34 days, I finish on the 1st of October. And then I'll probably need a day to recover, and then a day to get back to Paris, where I'm going to fly home. Okay, so the 4th is realistic for me to, and then I also build in a little buffer in case I can't finish in 34 days, just in case. Okay, and that's 40 days. Okay, that just seems to fit, and it actually fits with our family schedule in a way that's going to be just a little bit less impactful. And so I brought that to Carrie, and I said, okay, I think this can work. I think I can get this to happen in these days. And so she like softened about the idea, and it was like, okay, let's kind of keep talking about it. Let's keep seeing what happens. And what started to happen then was I started to actually live a Camino life even before I left. So about 50 days before, so this would have been now in early July, I started to do the planning and the preparation and the training to be ready for the Camino, my Camino, which begins tomorrow on the 28th. And it was amazing because it was proleptic. Remember now, proleptic means that there's a coming out into the open of a reality that's hidden, but in a present state. And so as I started to live in certain elements, the path of the Camino, which at a very basic level meant walking a whole bunch of miles every day. Well, I started to walk a whole bunch of miles every day. But the only way I could walk a whole bunch of miles every day would be to get up really early in the morning so that I wouldn't impact my family life during my busy days. And so I would be getting up at 3 in the morning and walking 10 miles in silence. No technology. Wait a minute. Detoxing from technology in silence. Well, what am I doing? I'm praying. Okay, so no, I'm praying. And so in praying, I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm starting to experience the very thing that I felt called to do, called to become. I'm starting to become the person that I had envisioned. Proleptically, it's starting to unveil itself in my life over the course of the 50, 40, 30, 20, 10 days. That's all starting to happen. And so I just started to recognize, like, okay, this is going to get me there. This is the path that the Lord is giving to me to have me become who I really am in a more profound and complete way, but in a way that is going to 10x me out of the life that I've been living. And I want to just say this is kind of crazy. Again, day 90 from when Carrie said, let's do this as a 90-day thing, was the first day that I left for the Camino. And what am I actually doing? Well, today I journaled 14 pages. I said I want to write a book. Well, these 14 pages are what I'm talking to you from. And what am I doing? Wait a minute, I'm talking to you on the internet, ministering like I said I wanted to. Like I said, that's my passion. That's what I'm supposed to be doing. Every day on the Camino, I'm going to be praying a rosary and streaming it live for folks to pray with me. Wait a minute, that's what I said I was going to do. So writing, ministering, praying. Oh, wait a minute, I have so many stories from even before the Camino, but then even when I left on Sunday, stories of people I've encountered where I've had a chance to pray and minister and share with them in a way that is a passionate call of ministry to speak to people about Christ and the Lord and the life of faith. And I haven't hit day 1 yet. So it's incredible, this 10x life that I'm talking about. I'm already seeing it manifest in this day 90. Okay, so remember I said that the path will reveal itself, like the strategy will start to reveal itself. So one of Carrie's big concerns was, well, financially, how's this going to work with regards to real estate? How are we going to pay our bills? Well, as I envisioned that for my life and having that happen at the end of August, something happened in June and July, and that is I had the most transactions I've ever had, real estate transactions, helping buyers and sellers, in the months of June and July in the entire 3 years I've been active as an agent. And I've been busy as an agent, but this was extraordinarily busy. Essentially, I got like 4 to 6 months of real estate transactions in 2 months, which is like, while I'm also preparing for the Camino, which is like, okay, Lord, you're revealing that you will make a way. Oh, but wait a minute. As I have been getting ready for the Camino, one of the things that has continued to happen is there are more clients that have been coming to me, calling me up and saying, hey, can you help me buy and sell? And so what I've needed to do is partner with other agents. And so what am I actually doing? I'm coaching them and strategizing with them and partnering with them where they're also working with my buyers and sellers so that I'm free to pursue this work. So even now in the real estate world, my 10X life has me doing what? It has me coaching and consulting with these other agents that are partnering with me right now so that, guess what? Even as I'm gone, I'm going to be able to do real estate in a way that provides for my family through these other agents. And then guess what? Okay, when I get back, by God's grace, if everything goes peacefully and well, and I get back home on the 4th of October, I end up leaving for a conference the next week for luxury real estate agents. Guess who is a speaker at that conference? I am. Didn't know that back in May. That wasn't on the radar screen, but it became on the radar screen. And so all of a sudden now, when I return, within a handful of days, I'll be speaking at this conference to agents and brokerages, and I'll have an opportunity to speak to them. And if the message is compelling, it'll open doors for me to be able to speak at their conferences and their events. And it potentially, and I've got actually great faith and expectation that if I do a good job there, I'm going to end up with at least one brokerage and some coaching clients that I will be able to do what, in fact, I feel so passionate about doing in real estate, which is using my best gifts to the greatest extent possible. So I'll continue to serve a certain number of clients, but I have these partner agents who are going to do a lot of the heavy lifting. And then I can do a small amount of coaching and consulting and speaking to be able to complement and supplement that income and be able to spend more life doing ministry. So the Lord is making a way not only to disrupt and dislodge the aspects of my life that not only is the Lord opening up the very realities of ministry that He is, that I've envisioned that I want to be able to do, but in the professional side in real estate, the Lord is opening that up as well. And that's all because of this sort of 10x process. I'm 10xing my life, and the Lord revealed that the Camino is the way that He's going to do that. All right, why am I doing the Camino? It was the God-revealed way to 10x my life. But there's more. That was just the first one. Remember I said there are 4 reasons? Isn't this remember there were 7 reasons why I'm not doing it and 4 obstacles to doing it. But now I'm going to share with you the 4 reasons why I am. The first is it was the God-revealed way to 10x my life. God will give you a way to 10x your life if you're willing to consider that process as something for you as well. Okay, the second is that I mentioned some dates that were really critical on my path, and they were very practically chosen. So August 25th, I leave. I start on the 28th. I finish on October 1st. I fly back on the 4th of October. Okay, those dates. Let's just put all those dates in. Those were all very practically chosen based on when I could leave, when I needed to be back, and what kind of length of Camino is practical and realistic. Okay, something else happened after May 27th, and that was in the middle of June. I had a meeting with a small group of people at a Catholic church. It was actually about a priest who was coming to speak at this Catholic church, St. Joan of Arc Parish in Post Falls, Idaho. The priest's name is Father Lawrence Carney, and he had written a book on the devotion to the Holy Face of Jesus. The devotion to the Holy Face is this image of Jesus on a linen cloth that was placed over what's called the veil of Veronica. So Veronica's veil, if you're a Catholic and you remember the Stations of the Cross, the 6th station of these 14 stations is that Jesus passes by Veronica, and Veronica comes out and takes off her headcloth and gives it to Jesus to wipe off the spit and the blood and the dirt and the sweat, to basically give him a small act of consolation and loving attention in the midst of him carrying his cross, where he is crowned with thorns, he's been scourged, he has been mocked, slapped, beaten, spat upon, and is headed towards his crucifixion. And in the midst of all of that, this courageous woman steps forth through the crowd, is willing to withstand and not be stopped by the Roman guards, or the persecuting Jewish leaders and others that are calling for his crucifixion. She pushes right through all of that to get to Jesus, to console him, and to do an act of loving kindness to him. And the tradition is that when she gave the cloth to Jesus and he placed it upon his face, it imprinted his image onto her veil. So that veil, the veil of Veronica, was a treasured relic that goes all the way back. Historically, gets traced back to her, who goes to Rome with it. And there's this whole set of sort of historical connecting points where this veil becomes a treasured relic at the Vatican and preserved and protected by the popes down through the ages. So all the way until today, where if you go to St. Peter's Basilica, you'll see one of the main pillars that goes all the way up to the dome has a big statue of Veronica with a veil in movement, and on it is imprinted the face of Jesus in his passion. And that veil, that relic of that actual veil, is kept there. Well, that veil was brought out in 1849 during a time of persecution of the church at the call of the Pope. And when they brought out that relic to be venerated, along with the relic of a piece of the crown of thorns and the true cross, there was this miraculous radiance of light that manifested itself over the course of 3 hours, and it ended up shining from the veil through the cloth that was covering the veil, and that cloth had the image of Christ manifest on it. And so an artist or two or three copied down, they captured that image that was manifested again in this sort of miraculous radiant light on that cloth. And there's a record of this. There are those who track these things to say that this is just made up as a story. Well, that holy face that was imprinted, there's, again, back on the wall there is a replica of it. What happened back in 1849 was that there were 200 copies made and certified of the image that appeared and was depicted by an artist. And those 200 copies were spread out. Well, a couple of the copies ended up in Tours, France, Tours in English, Tours, France. And that actually corresponds to the life of a nun who at that time had died just previously. Her name was Sister Mary of St. Peter, and she received these revelations from Jesus, these messages from Jesus about the blasphemies, the sins that were being committed by the people of that time, not so much in the church, but yes, in the church impacted by the world, but in the world, sinning against the first 3 commandments, against the existence of God, or atheism, against the name of God, or blasphemy, and against the Lord's Day as set apart for God and godly activity, so profaning the Lord's Day. So these various forms of blasphemy in the form of either idolatry or atheism, in the form of taking the Lord's name in vain, and in the name of profaning what is meant to be holy, which is the day set apart for God, that those blasphemies were associated with the passion of Jesus in the way that he was, again, mocked, bruised, spat upon, slapped, hit. And so this holy face devotion was an antidote. So said Jesus to Sister Mary of St. Peter. So over the course of several years, she received these messages promoting a devotion to the holy face of Jesus for the sake of repairing the damage caused by these sins. All right, there's one other element of this story, and you're thinking to yourself, okay, what does this have to do with Tom's Camino? I'm going to tell you. Just be patient with me for another couple of minutes. There was a layman, an attorney by training, who was wealthy, who also ended up in Tours by God's providential hand. And he had a deep devotion to the Lord and was deeply offended by blasphemies at the time. He became familiar with Sister Mary of St. Peter at the Discalced Carmelite Convent in Tours, and became familiar with the messages that the Lord was giving to her about establishing this devotion to the Holy Face. Well, she dies without getting it established, but he was very convicted by the messages. And when this miraculous presentation of the face of the Lord from Veronica's veil came out in these images, a couple of these images came to the Discalced Carmelite Convent in Tours, and the prioress, knowing his devotion to the Holy Face, devotion that was sparked by and promoted by Sister Mary of St. Peter, she gave him two of these images. And he began to display them in his own house. And what ended up happening was visitors that would come to see him for reasons of work would end up experiencing these miracles. And over the course of 20 plus years, there are 6,000 or more recorded miracles associated with this image of the Holy Face, this devotion to the Holy Face. So in addition to the reality of praying and doing penance and making acts of reparation by praying these prayers that are associated with the Holy Face devotion, there's also this manifestation of God's miraculous power at work through devotional activities connected to this holy image of the face of Veronica. And so it becomes a contemporary way for us to do the work of Veronica, that the Lord today, the Lord Jesus and God himself continues to experience or continues to have the wider society, and again, bleeding into the church, significant sins against God's presence. And so atheism and idolatry have just continued to be on the rise, right, and spread. Again, devotion to the presence of the Lord and to the Christian faith and the Catholic Church is certainly diminished. Then we have, again, the taking of the Lord's name in vain, how that is just such a common thing now. It goes without even being addressed. And then the profaning of the Lord's day. Like, is Sunday even anything special for people anymore, other than sort of a day off, rather than anything to do with being set apart for the purposes of God and honoring the Lord and remembering that, wait a minute, he's the source of our meaning in life and our future on this pilgrimage of life. So what does this Holy Face devotion have to do with my journey here on the Camino? Well, a few things. I mentioned dates. So the first is the date of August 25th. August 25th is very significant in this devotion to the Holy Face because it's the feast of Saint Louis IX, King of France, who put forward laws and policies as the society's king against blasphemy, honoring God and honoring his holy name. And so he is a saint that was deeply associated with this devotion, the devotion of Sister Mary of St. Peter and Leo Dupont, who's that lay person, the lay person attorney who was this, again, companion to Sister Mary of St. Peter in this Holy Face devotion. So I land in Paris on the 25th and I go to Tours on my way south to Saint Jean Pied de Port, and I stop in Tours on the 26th is when I land. I leave the US on the 25th. I land on the 26th and I get to Tours to go to the Oratory of the Holy Face, which is the place where these two holy people are buried, this Leo Dupont, the layperson, and Sister Mary of St. Peter, and the Oratory, which was this home where Leo Dupont had all of these miracles occur by the devotion to the Holy Face image. And I was there on the 26th of August, which was the date of the first revelation to Sister Mary of St. Peter. So this whole devotion breaks open into the world on August the 26th in 1843 by Sister Mary of St. Peter. And that's when I land in France and I get to be in Tours on that day. I'm starting my Camino on August the 28th, the feast of St. Augustine, who is a hero of the Holy Face in terms of his own devotion to the Holy Face. I'm following a path that this Father Lawrence Carney mapped out, which was a 33-day consecration to the Holy Face. And so it's a 34-day process, 33 days of prayer and consecrations on the 34th day. So I start on the 28th and guess 34, it's a 34-stage pilgrimage. So I'm actually doing the Camino, literally the length of the consecration to the Holy Face devotion is that exact length. And I finish on October the 1st. October the 1st, I arrive in Santiago de Compostela. I hope to God, pray for that. And that is the day that the Pope, Leo the 13th, formally identified the devotion to the Holy Face as having a worldwide scope and approval. It's called an arch-confraternity. It was given that approval on October the 1st, which is also, for those of you that are devout Catholics will know, is the feast day of the little flower, Saint Therese, a Discalced Carmelite, and lived just after Sister Mary of St. Peter became familiar with her writings. And the little flower, Saint Therese of the Child Jesus and of the Holy Face. That was the name she took at her final profession. It was Saint Therese of the Child Jesus and of the Holy Face. There's a famous picture of her holding that image right behind you, the image of the Holy Face. And so she is a great saint connected to the Holy Face devotion. And that's the day that I finish my 34-day, 33-day, and the 34th day consecration to the Holy Face. And then I fly back on October the 4th, the feast of St. Francis of Assisi, who not only walked the Camino, but was also himself someone who's considered a hero of the Holy Face, had a great devotion to this personal image of Jesus in his passion. And so I'm looking at all these dates and I'm saying to myself, all right, Lord, if you're revealing something to me about what my life is supposed to be about when I come back from the Camino, you're writing it in really large letters. Now, for those of you that are sort of on the outside of faith, you can look at all of these dates and say, oh, that's just kind of devotionalism and it's quaint and it's kind of silly. And if that's your position, that's your position. But from the inside of me living and walking this path, the striking number of correspondences between the dates that I picked for the Camino, the path that the number of stages I was going to walk, and the dates that these associated with map out on top of this Holy Face devotion, not just to mention the geographic connection to it, that was so stunning to me that it is, for me, one of these incredible signs of even further clarification about what's my life supposed to be about when I finish. Remember the 10x life? What's that life where I want to write about things, speak about things, teach about things? When I identify the themes that are most associated with those things that I'm passionate about, guess where those themes coalesce? In the Holy Face devotion, in the lives and in the writings of Sister Mary of St. Peter and Leo Dupont. And so in a certain sense, I resonate deeply with this idea that I didn't choose this Holy Face devotion. It came to me. And it came to me after May 27th when I met with this group of people. And I said, yeah, I'll be happy to interview this priest. I interviewed him on July the 2nd. It aired on July the 3rd, which is the Feast of St. Thomas, my name. And I got just this compelling sense of, wait a minute, let me learn more about this. And so I read a book about Sister Mary of St. Peter and a book about Leo Dupont. And all of these dates just started to line up with what I had set for the Camino. And I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm walking this Camino as a means of living the devotion to the Holy Face. So why am I walking the Camino? I gave you 7 reasons why I'm not, which are very common and worthy reasons that many people choose. There, I shared with you the 4 obstacles that would completely make it impractical and improbable that I would ever walk the Camino. And yet, when it became revealed as the path to get me to the 10x life, I started to see these incredible manifestations of the 10x life starting to show up in my preparation and planning and working towards the Camino. And now, as I'm starting to walk the Camino, which tomorrow I do. And so please pray for me for that, for my provision, protection, and guidance on this. Well, this brings me to my 3rd reason for walking the Camino, and that is that it is for me a time for much more intensified prayer, penance, and reparation. So the thing that I shared at the very much early on in the talk about, Dad, what are you most excited about? It's, you know what, I'm going to have the incredible opportunity to spend hours a day praying for my family. And not just praying, but the walking itself is both a penance and a prayer. And I'll share more about that in days to come. But I started with the very simple question, why am I walking the Camino? I'm walking the Camino because I love my family and I want my family to be provided for, protected, and led by the Lord. And in a spiritual way, first of all, but in the total dimensions, all the dimensions of their lives. And I know that the Lord honors my own acts of sacrifice and my fasting, my self-denial, and walking a very difficult path. This is not a vacation. This is a vocation to walk the Camino for me. And so lastly, just around that, the number of people that I'm praying for, I've got like 7 pages of prayer requests. If you want me to pray for you while I'm on the Camino, you can go to my website, mycatholicfaith.org, and you can send me your prayer request, and I'll pray for you. I'm praying every day already for the people who have sent me prayer requests, but I'm happy to add to that. That's what I'm here for. And Carrie, she was challenging to me a little bit earlier today because I'm just 2 days, 3 days. This is my Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. This is my 3rd day away from my ordinary life, my life of getting ready for the Camino, where I've been so busy doing real estate work that I've still given a few hours a day to doing real estate work and some ministry work, just because I need to. But she's like, Tom, you didn't go all the way to southern France and northern Spain to do ministry, to do real estate. You did it for this other reason. Make sure you protect these godly goals, these bigger things. I don't need you to be away from home to just live the life you have at home there. So please do whatever you can to protect and preserve these highest ideals for your time, because that's why I'm sacrificing having you be away from home. I'm supporting you being away from home so that you can do those things. So as quickly and efficiently as you can, diminish boundaries and eliminate that part of your life. So I'm taking that to heart, and I'm trusting God will work it out. Well, the last reason, I said there are 4 reasons. And the last reason is I'm open to the mystery of God unveiling other reasons. And very specifically, in Luke chapter 5, there's the story of Peter working hard all night, not catching anything. He's cleaning his nets. He's doing everything right. He's got a business. He knows how to fish, and yet he's caught nothing. And Jesus comes to him. He's got this big crowd. He says, let me get in your boat, and I'm going to speak from your boat to the crowd because I need a little distance so I can actually speak to them. And that getting in the boat is what I want for my life, is that Jesus, you get into the boat of my life, you get into the boat of my profession, you get right into the middle of my life, and you speak from my life. Yes, I want that. But the Camino can be something more. It's what happens next. After Jesus is finished preaching from his boat, from his life, from his work, he says, go out to the deep Go out into the deep and lower your nets for a catch. He's telling the fishermen how to fish. And he's telling them the wrong way to do it, the wrong time of day, the wrong location, the wrong way to use the nets. And he's exhausted. But Jesus says, I'm giving you this opportunity. Trust me. Go out into the deep and lower your nets. Trust and obey and watch what I can do. And what did Jesus do? He shocked him with his generosity. He shocked Peter with his generosity. The catch of fish was so great, it overwhelmed not just one boat, but two boats. Unlike anything he could have seen. It was a 10x catch. It was a catch that made no sense connected to the current reality of what he was doing. But because he had pursued the opportunity that the Lord had given him, he experienced this overwhelming gift of the Lord filling his life to overflowing. It was awe-inspiring. It was amazing. It was stupendous. I'm open to that, Lord. Lord, I say yes to the opportunity of the Camino. I say yes as an act of going out into the deep. This is not an ordinary thing. This is an extraordinary step I'm taking as a yes. It's not a requirement. I don't feel like a divine command to be here. I feel like it is a divine opportunity where the Lord is saying, if you say yes, you're going to be stretched. You're going to be extended. You're going to be giving in ways that you can't even imagine yet. It's going to be hard. But if you say yes, I'm going to take you out into the deep. And if you give me room, if you trust me, I'm going to fill your nets with a catch that is far overwhelming anything that you can imagine. And that's what I'm open to. I don't know what form that's going to take. I don't have to. I'm trusting and obeying, and I'm leaving space for the Lord to act. So why am I on the Camino? That's why I'm on the Camino. It took me a long time to share. I actually articulated all of that in writing today on the train. I wrote it. And sharing it with you today, again, are two manifestations of this 10x life. So I hope and I pray that this reflection is a blessing to you. And if I can be a blessing to you through prayer, please let me know. Reach out to me through mycatholicfaith.org. Join me on the Camino through the reflections and through the times of prayer that I'll stream. And be blessed. Share in that blessing yourself. And let's see what the Lord has in store for you. A 10x life, a devotion to the Holy Face, a call to prayer, penance, and reparation, and a willingness to go out into the deep to experience God's shocking generosity. I don't think it's just for me. I think it's for you too. All right. God bless you guys, and join me for my next video.